Jay Blevins writes, the Celtics are a heavy favorite, but should they be? We'll dive into the matchup. Kevin McCormick also has a Sixers breakdown with the Celtics, and he'll have a preview of tonight's game coming up on the website before 6:30 tonight. So make sure you get all the coverage at 97.3 ESPN.com. Jay Blevins joins us now on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. As this matchup has a lot of different wrinkles and variations, it's probably the most talked about national matchup in round number one. But why are the Celtics such a heavy favorite, Jay? And should they be?
I think that people look at history. They look at some of the problems that the Celtics have presented to Ben Simmons, especially with their defense against him. And I think people look at there's a little bit of sort of memory of Al Horford shutting down Joel Embiid a couple of years ago. But a couple of those factors don't exist in this series. So if you just look at this year, Sixers are 3-1 against the Celtics, and there's some pretty telling stats on why they were 3-1. So, I think this is a much closer series than people think.
Yeah, I know Ben Simmons being out. You mentioned they've done a good job defending Ben Simmons, but Simmons has played better against them this year. Typically in the playoffs is where they've really bogged him down. But with Simmons out, what do the Sixers do defensively against Jayson Tatum? Because Tatum has struggled against Ben.
Yeah, I think that's right. I think Tatum shot 33% this season when guarded primarily by Ben Simmons, and that's huge. So I think the task of who defends him is probably going to be multiple people. So he's probably going to look at waves of defenders. They're probably going to switch a lot. So unless they want to really get him into isolation situations, he's probably going to see Al Horford on a switch, probably start with some Tobias Harris. He's going to get a lot of different looks, and he's definitely going to be the key, right? So I think the first place people's minds will go is Matisse Thybulle, but Thybulle really matched up against Kemba Walker quite a bit. So I'm not sure that is the first matchup. It may be, but I suspect it's going to be more than one person.
What do you think about Joel Embiid on Tatum at times? I will say the only thing that concerns me a bit about that, even though I know he can have success to an extent, is he's going to have to do so much on offense that using him defensively might wear him out more.
Yeah, I think they're going to pretty much stick to their drop coverage, try to dominate the defensive glass. And so I don't expect them to use Joel as a primary defender on Tatum. Now, the Celtics may try to get that isolation to draw Embiid away from the rim to give them some sort of advantage on the glass. That's a thing that the Celtics might look to do, and I think that would be pretty smart on their part. But I'm not sure the Sixers would want that.
What about in the situation with Al Horford? Do you start him? Do you bring him off the bench? I mean, there's been some talk that Thybulle's going to start here. If you're Brett Brown, what do you do with Horford? Start him, bring him off the bench?
If I was Brett Brown, I would 100% start him in this series. And that's not to say that I disagreed with bringing him to the bench midway through the season. I think that was a really good call, a gutsy call. But in this series, with this matchup, knowing what he knows about this coach, this scheme, and these players, you want him out there as much as possible.
You look at Thybulle as potentially starting. I mean, is that essentially saying, hey, we have no other option to defend Jayson Tatum, and that's why, we pause? And number two, do you think that Thybulle's going to get the call tonight?
Well, I don't know if you were on the call with Brett yesterday, but he hedged on that. He said certainly. I would expect Thybulle to start one of the 7 games at least. Is it tonight? I'm not sure. They may try to stick with continuity, not throw a curveball right away. Maybe throw that as a change up for game 2 if tonight's matchups don't work out well. But I think they want as much competent ball handling as possible on the floor to limit turnovers, to limit transition, to limit the transition 3. So my guess is that Thybulle doesn't start tonight, but at some point in this series he will start a game.
Josh Richardson's probably going to match up against Kemba Walker. How do you think that his size and versatility will match up against Walker? And keep in mind, there was a knee injury with Kemba as well, right? So just something to think about with him out on the floor, although I do think that he's coming around on that injury.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. I think you want, the thing that Kemba, he exists in this place where he is so fast. He's pretty much quicker than anyone. So you really just have to be bigger than him. And I think Josh is right in that sweet spot. Thibault is as well, of being big enough, but also quick enough to just create inefficient looks and maybe reroute him on his way to the hoop. So they did a really good job with Kemba, primarily with Matisse on him this season. They did not do a good job for the rest of his career when he was in Charlotte. But this year they've done a pretty good job. So, I think he's the linchpin. If he really sort of goes off, then you're going to have a two-man punch, pick your poison with him and Tatum. It's going to get ugly. But I think if they can limit Kemba to inefficient offense, which they were able to do, then I think Josh will have earned his paycheck and made that trade maybe look much better than maybe it did a few months ago.
Going back to Joel Embiid real quick, are we not making a big enough deal about the whole wrist injury where he went back to get x-rays? It does seem like there's a lot of time out there since that happening where he's moving that thing around and he's holding it, and it does seem like it's causing him discomfort.
Yeah. I don't know, maybe it's just exhaustion of talking about nicks and bruises with him. I don't expect it to be a major factor in his game.
Jay Blevins covers the Sixers. Of course, they'll play tonight, 6:30, Game 1. A lot of people talk about Joel Embiid and whether or not he can carry this team. Is that the only Sixers path to a series victory?
Well, I would say that is the primary path. Yeah, I think you want to be able to credibly feed the post, where he gets deep post touches, not 20 feet away from the rim, makes quick, decisive decisions and passes out of it or scores quickly and gets to the line. That is the path to winning this series against the Celtics, because if you can do those things, then you sort of negate everything else they do well. It's just the number one marker for them being successful offensively. So I would say, yeah, in many ways it's that simple. I wouldn't have I wouldn't spend a lot of practice time on a plan B, because if plan A doesn't work, there aren't that many other options.
How do you anticipate the Celtics defending him right from the jump? Man on man with Tice?
I mean, they're gonna double down. Tice has to hold his ground for about 1.5 seconds, if that, and the double will come. And then guys will rotate, and it really just becomes a game of, can the Sixers make the right pass and get the right looks? I don't expect them to leave Tice on an island against Joel Embiid.
Yeah, I know a lot of people looking at that matchup because earlier in the season, the Sixers had kind of, played Boston and dominated those games with Joel. The last time, Tice really defended Embiid pretty much throughout that game and gave him some problems. So I guess everyone's kind of looking at Boston to go back to that again. And if that happens, let's just say, okay, Tice does a great job. He kind of, handles Embiid. Who is the secondary guy? Is this a Tobias Harris? Like, is this a series made for Harris to score? Is this a series made for Shake Milton? Who is that secondary guy that needs to at least help Joel out?
The real answer is it doesn't matter. If they do that, then the series is over. But the answer to the question of who is sort of that secondary option, yeah, I think Tobias Harris is quietly that second option who has the capability of scoring 25 a game and really putting pressure and maybe making guys like Tatum work on the other end enough to maybe tire them out a little bit to limit their game that way. So I think Tobias Harris is certainly poised to be the second star. I think Al Horford is going to be the key to making the offense run smoothly, but that's not going to show up in the box score. But I really do expect to see him feeding the post from sort of the high post elbow. quite a bit and trying to run some things through him because he is such a advanced decision maker. And having him play that role maybe negates some of the things that Marcus Smart can do and some of the other defensive wings and guards.
Yeah, I know there's a big conversation whenever these teams meet between the head coaches. Brett Brown, obviously, against Brad Stevens. Where does that matchup rank on the list of things that matter in this series?
I mean, I really don't think it matters that much. I think if they box out, if they dominate the glass, and they can limit turnovers and run through Embiid and he can dominate, then the coaching aspect should be a fairly small part of this.
You just lost all the fans out there that you once had, Jay Blevins. Sixers won the regular season series.
It's what I do best, by the way. Get my fans' hopes up and then lose.
You don't think Brett Brown is a problem in this series against Brad Stevens? How dare you?
I think it. In the last minute, out of a timeout, you want to run a good play. Listen, this is going to come down to Joel Embiid is the best player in the series. Does he play like it? Does he dominate? And do the Sixers play big, play long, play physical, dominate the glass? And if they do those two things, the coach will look smart. And if they don't do those two things, the coach will look dumb.
That's typically how it works. Jay Blevins is a smart man. You mentioned clean the glass, rebounding. That was the big advantage that the Sixers had during the regular season. They really whipped Boston, a smaller team, on the glass. And if they can do that, obviously, it's a big difference. But having Ben Simmons against not having Ben Simmons in this series, is this the team you want to play without Ben Simmons?
Yes. Yes, it is. It is because they're very good in transition defense, which is where Ben Simmons can operate most effectively offensively. And then I think that they have enough outside motivation, emotional motivation to face a team like the Celtics and really bring everything. So, to me, and I think I said it maybe on one of my first appearances here, Boston, I think, is the team that they needed in the first round, the team they want in the first round. And I think it's the hurdle that Joel Embiid needs to get over. But quite frankly, I just think that the Celtics on one end of the floor, only one end of the floor, are a really tough matchup with for Ben Simmons. So this is the one series I think you can sort of live without him.
They sure played in the seeding games like they didn't want to get out of the 6th seed.
Yeah, no doubt about that.
It's funny that those preseason, the scrimmages played pretty high level basketball, much more so than your normal preseason game. And then the seeding games came, and it was almost like preseason as well. So it almost felt like there was 11 preseason games instead of 3 scrimmages and 8 regular season games. So I think you throw all of that out the window. These are two teams that know each other really well. These are two teams with very clear identities, and whichever one can impose their identity on the other is going to win. It's all going to seem simple in retrospect, and those 8 games will be a distant memory.
Absolutely. How do you feel about Shake defensively? I just look at some of these perimeter players, and I feel he's going to have some tough matchups at times.
Yeah, but if they go to a really switch-heavy scheme, then really all he's got to do is just get to the screen, guard his man to the screen, and then cover the guy that screens him. And he is big. He's 6'6" with a 7-foot wingspan, so he's not going to get completely destroyed by one of their bigger guys. And quite frankly, the Celtics don't have a ton of big guys that can really hurt you. So this is one of those series that I think for Shake is probably a good series as well.
All right, it's 6:30 tonight right here on 97.3 ESPN. It's the Sixers and the Celtics, Game 1. Game 2 will be Wednesday at 6:30, Game 3 Friday at 6:30, and Game 4 is Sunday at 1 o'clock. You can hear them all right here on 97.3 ESPN, your home for the Sixers and Flyers playoffs. Jay Blevins, NBA on Twitter. Give him a follow over there and check out his story right now on 97.3 ESPN.com. And by the way, your series pick is?
Sixers in 7. I think that home court is irrelevant, and I think eventually the physicality will win the day.
Sixers in 7. McCormick also goes Sixers in 7. So both Sixers guys going Sixers in 7. I'll get your pick. I'll give my pick, and we'll do it all before the game tonight. Jay Blevins, enjoy it, pal.
Thank you very much.
And he, like all guests, appeared via the Boardwalk Honda hotline.